Welcome to the LEXIT Founder Series. This is our next installment of the LEXIT Founder Series. We're here with Trevor Koverko, CEO of Polymath Network. Trevor's been a serial entrepreneur for many years. He's going to share with you a bit about his background and some of the successful exits that he's had prior to getting involved in Polymath. But he's been in the blockchain and crypto space for a number of years already. Trevor, welcome. Thanks for your time. And why don't you share with us a bit about your background and some of the success that you've had as an entrepreneur?
Thanks, Will. Big fan of LEXIT, big fan of you and all the kind of amazing stuff you do for the community. So thank you for the invitation. I'm very honored to be here. And yeah, I'll just dive right in. I'm a tech guy. I've always been a tech guy. I started kind of online businesses for the last decade or so, and kind of across the gamut from kind of digital marketing to software businesses to virtual reality, education-based companies. So, you know, I've been kind of on a long journey of starting, scaling, and selling businesses, and a lot of them have been, website, cash flowing businesses, e-commerce, content businesses, recurring revenue businesses. So this is something that I really enjoy, and not just starting, but also financing. I'm a very active investor, both in crypto and non-crypto businesses. And I also like to roll up businesses. So I like to have a fund or some kind of private equity vehicle that raises capital and then deploys that capital to and finds management to run businesses and then become the principal or the owner of the fund. So that's kind of a synopsis of my kind of M&A background, and I still do a lot of this stuff to this day.
So you've been involved with a number of different sort of reorganizations, acquisitions, different kinds of packaging of these company assets. And I guess, you know, with your experience and your impressive resume, what are some of the problems that you see with the M&A process for novice entrepreneurs as it stands today? What are some of the biggest surprises that they encounter?
Well, here's a little insight that I've learned over the years. So I went to a business school in Canada, this fancy kind of school, and they teach you essentially how to be a manager. They teach you just like a lot of top business schools. You get the sense that it's like the top of the food chain, learning, you know, these skills, how to operate, how to hire people, how to fundraise, and so on. And these are all very important business skills for sure. But everybody teaches it, like the Harvard business schools, etc. They all kind of teach people basically how to be a CEO. And what I've learned is, depending on your own personal situations and skill set, there's other ways to kind of make your time more highly leveraged than just necessarily running a business. And I actually break that down into kind of two skills that I advise young people, anybody, just to learn above all else. And this is kind of contrary to a lot of conventional wisdom. But in my view, the only two skills you need to run to learn to be successful are actually fundraising and hiring. And if you can master those two skills, you really don't need to know anything else. And I went the hard way. I took my lumps and learned how to operate and learned how to do all the subtasks involved in that. But the most highly leveraged, I've got a lot of mentors and a lot of guys who, they're not necessarily on the cap table. They're not necessarily, a C-level executive in companies, but they're just really good at raising capital and then inserting the right kind of pieces to the puzzle to run the business. And, for me in crypto now, we're running an organization now. We'll be up to 40 people soon. I'm the operator of the business, and I love it personally, but I also kind of advise people to think about kind of broader, more high-level skills like hiring and fundraising.
So with hiring and fundraising, of course, you have to think ahead to that exit point, that future point of selling the business or kind of exiting for your shareholders, stakeholders, investors. How does that set up the business for success when you get to that M&A kind of decision point?
Yeah, so this is kind of right up my wheelhouse. I love the M&A process, and the deal structuring component of it. I advise people as well, in addition to hiring and fundraising, to learn kind of the legal contracts, the shareholder agreements, the share purchase documentation, all the stuff involved in making a deal and structuring it, and incentivizing management. That's another skill. Is how do you line up compensation to incentivize them to create value for the shareholders, or yourself if you're the shareholder. So that's what I kind of learned. I didn't really learn this in school. This is something you kind of learn on the job, but it's structuring deals, structuring, compensation packages like earnouts and stock options for people. Recruiting is like just finding people, that's the number one bottleneck in 100% of my businesses has been people. It's just finding really talented A players to run the business is hard. And it's got to the point, in crypto, there's so few experienced operators that I decided to step in myself and run my business, Polymath. But to get back to your question, I think, you want to think of the exit, but you also don't. You want to build the business, put it up for success, but in the back of your mind, it's not necessarily a bad thing to think about, what is a buyer of this company? What do they look like? What would they pay? What would the structure of the deal be like? Would it be an all cash deal? Would it be a stock deal? Would it be some kind of a royalty? When I buy deals, when I used to buy deals, I'd like to bring management over, and then you would give them a down payment. So you give them some credit for the company that they created, but then you'd also incentivize them with revenue shares or earnouts to make sure that they're incentivized to grow the business as time goes on. So those are kind of some of my high level thoughts on M&A.
Excellent. So, as entrepreneurs kind of think about the exit and dealing with the challenges of approaching that, there isn't a solution out there that has kind of some digital streamlined processes for anyone looking through this. I make the point usually it's basically who is where you start, and maybe who you can get introduced to, but that's a pretty limited pool if you really think you have some parts of your business that's sunsetting or ending its lifespan that are valuable and could help a new company perhaps. So what do you think about how the market's changing with some of these things like blockchain technology, and just the idea that LEXIT has for digitizing the M&A process and making this kind of more of a marketplace?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a complicated process, and there's a reason investment bankers have the most hellish work week in the world. They work 90, 100. That's kind of the path I was on, and just hearing the horror stories. It's very manual. It's very, in my opinion, outdated. There's a lot of inefficiencies of just financial modeling and doing projections and pro formas and keeping the paperwork sorted out. I have a funny story. When I sold a business, there was a typo on the share certificates and the articles of incorporation. So I had to, it's kind of a inadvertently funny name that came out of it. I don't know if I can say it on here, but at any rate, I think it's important that we do look at ways to streamline this process. That's part of what I'm trying to do with Polymath, is say, in the same way Bitcoin and the blockchain made payments more streamlined, and it got rid of a lot of unnecessary friction and middlemen like payment processors, foreign exchange, settlement banks, clearinghouses. All those guys are not needed because the blockchain is peer-to-peer. And I think the same principle can apply to the broader capital markets and M&A. Is a lot of these quote-unquote rent-seeking middlemen don't necessarily need to be along the way, and they don't need to be complicating the process. And the legal, got a lot of horror stories over the years with legal bills and you know, talking to 6 partners on every call and just kind of unnecessary. I think there's an incentive for the incumbents in this ecosystem to keep things the way they are, and that's why Polymath exists, and that's why I think LEXIT and the awesome team there is working on an interesting project as well.
So there's a lot of value that can be unlocked here, it seems, with a project like LEXIT. And of course, when you're seeking to digitize, tokenize certain company assets, these would be securities. And that, you know, things like IP, and, you know, if this is going to be made liquid and kind of this value unlocked and freed up for the world, there's going to be some interplay here with securities as tokens for this part of the process of trading company assets, let's say on LEXIT as well. So I know there's some things in store, and LEXIT and Polymath have been exploring a working relationship together. Maybe it's too soon to comment on any of that, but perhaps, you know, just talk about what the role of blockchain is in all of this, in terms of, you know, LEXIT bringing together this more fluid marketplace for M&A for these small to medium to large projects that are looking to exit, and Polymath's role as well in facilitating the creation of tokenized versions of these kinds of assets that, of course, would be securities.
You know, for us, it's about you know, launching securities and launching businesses and using a decentralized network that we're not necessarily in control of, but using gatekeepers, trusted gatekeepers like broker dealers, like exchanges, like all these key stakeholders in the ecosystem. So that's what Polymath is about, and making it trusted, making it transparent, and making the issuance process more efficient. And yeah, I think that's why LEXIT's an interesting proposition, because, you know, launching is just one half of the equation. Then you need an off-ramp, you need access to liquidity, you need access to capital, and I think that's a very necessary component of the ecosystem.
Great. Well, I just want to say thanks, Trevor, for sharing your time with us and sharing your wealth of experience with the mergers and acquisitions landscape, and you know, being a very experienced entrepreneur yourself in the crypto space as well. Certainly, your input here is pretty valuable, I think. So I hope everyone out there in the audience appreciates that. And once again, this is the LEXIT Founder Series, where, you know, we get to hear more about how M&A can be disrupted using the new technologies at our disposal. Thanks again, Trevor.
Yeah, no, you're a true beast out there, and appreciate all your support over the years, and big fan of what LEXIT is doing. So I'm excited to be a part of it.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Trevor. We'll talk to you again soon.